Previously on 100 Days of Stardew Valley.
I mean, she didn't like us before. She really doesn't like us now.
Oh my god.
I put a gold egg. I could have saved that gold egg and I could have sold it for money instead of you saying it's an average soup. What the? Oh god. Oh god.
I played 200 Days of Stardew Valley. Well, you know the drill. It's actually 224 days because we're doing a full year and not stopping midway through. I had a few goals for year 2. Number 1, complete the community center. 2, make $1 million in gold. And 3, get to Ginger Island. And as this was my first Stardew playthrough, I gotta say I did better than I thought. So let's get started and let me know what you think.
Just like that, year 2!
I started off the year from a visit from the new guy in town, Kent. Well, actually he used to live here before me, but he was deployed for a while and came back. I got a notice letter in the mail letting me know that the price of raw materials at Robin and Clint's has increased. That would have been nice to know earlier so I could stock up on materials, but oh well. I headed over to Clint's to go buy some new seeds for the spring season when I was stopped by an Abigail cutscene. Abigail was rage playing Journey of the Prairie King but was stuck on the first level. She asked us to help her beat it and we agreed, and it wasn't too difficult and we were able to beat it in a jiffy. I bought some parsnip seeds from Pierre's in hopes of getting some gold quality ones for the community center. And when I walked outside, I caught Sam getting in trouble by Lewis for riding his skateboard around town. Lewis asked for my opinion and I said it's none of my business. Both of them didn't seem too happy with my response, but hey, I'm not involved. But Sam got off with just a warning. Upon returning to my farm, I noticed that my cherry tree was finally done growing and was sprouting some fruit. So I grabbed some cherries and ran them over to the community center to donate. This completed the artisan bundle and I got a keg as a reward. The next morning, Willie sent me a chowder recipe in the mail and Clint sent me a gold bar. Thanks for the gifts, guys! My sheep had finally grown up, so I headed down to Marnie's to buy my first set of shears. I ran over to my barn and sheared my first piece of wool. Amazing! And I quickly crafted a loom, placed it down, and threw the wool inside. I decided that I wanted to work on my friendship levels a little bit, and so I walked into Sam's house only to watch him drop an egg on the floor. Jody ran in super upset at the mess that Sam had made, but I told her that it was actually me that dropped it. Jody then made a 180 on her attitude and said, "No big deal, messes happen," and then Sam said he would clean it up and Jody was like, "I love you." The next stop was Emily's house, where I walked in on her sleeping and somehow teleported into her dream. She was chanting Mooiwa on top of this pedestal thing and asked why we were there. I don't know, girl, you tell me, this is your dream. Rainbow bands started to flash by and Emily said that it was a sign. And then she woke up and said there was something special about us. I don't know whether to be flattered or concerned that I just watched this happen. When that weird dream was over, I decided to try out Emily's sewing machine for the first time. I experimented with a duck feather, which gave me a lime green striped shirt, and I quickly put it on to test, and it was giving construction worker.
I look like a construction worker. Can we gift people shirts? Because I made a really ugly shirt.
When I tried to leave Emily's house, I was hit with another cutscene of her and a parrot crashing into the window.
Oh my fucking god, he fucking dead.
Turns out the parrot wasn't dead, and so Emily brought it inside her home and fixed up its wing. The next stop was to explore my friendship with Caroline more, and I realized that I could enter the door in her kitchen. It took me to her back sunroom where she grows her own tea leaves. The room was gorgeous, and I wish I had one like that in my own house. She offered me a cup of tea, to which I happily said yes, and she showed me how to make the tea, which included this weird little guy dancing in what looks like a weed tea? Yeah, I don't know. She says it helps her calm down, so I think I'm catching her drift. I explored around more and realized that I could finally enter Leah's house, where I walked in on her making a sculpture. She was explaining the art of the sculpture and the essence of the wood, and then I came across this creepy option. So I thought it would be funny to click it and see what happens, and well, it wasn't good.
I just want to see what happens. Wait, huh? Oh, she just hit us. And we got kicked out? I'm so sorry. Oh, she's so mad at us. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. It was an experiment.
After that whole debacle, I decided to try my hand at secret note number 19. I spent a long time trying to complete the puzzle in front of the hospital, only to realize that that wasn't the correct building in the note. In my defense, they're both blue buildings. I finally figured it out, with the help of the Stardew Wiki, that the correct house was actually Jody's house. So I made my way over and completed the puzzle, only to find a super weird gold statue of Lewis behind his house. I don't want to know what Lewis is doing in his free time. So, as any sane person would do, I looked up what to do with it on the wiki because there's no way I'm keeping that thing in my house. The wiki told me to leave it somewhere in town, and so I plopped it next to the tavern for the night where everyone in town could see. My parsnips were done growing the next morning, and I finally had enough gold quality ones for the community center. I checked my mail, and Caroline sent me a crafting recipe for a tea sapling. Gus sent me a recipe for a salmon dinner. Emily requested a fresh apricot. And the last letter was from a very displeased Lewis asking me not to place his private belongings in town. He also gave me 750 gold of hush money to keep his little project a secret. Well, Lewis, you wouldn't have to worry about this stuff if you didn't do weird shit like this in the first place. I ran over to the community center and donated my gold quality parsnips, thus completing the quality crops bundle and the pantry. Now I only have the bulletin board left to restore the center. On my way home, I stopped by Leah's to give her a parsnip in hopes of getting my friendship level back up with her. Again, I'm so sorry, Leah. I opened secret note number 15 and headed to the train tracks to try and uncover its secret, which happened to be a treasure chest. Cool! Then I headed to bed and the greenhouse was fixed overnight. Finally, I've been waiting for this one. I had collected a few new quests over the next couple of days. The first was to bring maple syrup to the Secret Woods, keg potatoes for Pam, and to collect 100 pieces of bone for Gunther. I also planted some fruit trees in my new greenhouse in hopes for some fresh fruit in the near future. I decided to complete the Secret Woods quest since I had some extra maple syrup sitting in my chest. I walked into the Secret Woods and was met by this really creepy bear. He asked if we brought the good stuff, and so I said, "Hell yeah, brother," and handed over the syrup. He said that we were now friends, and as a reward, salmon berries and blackberries are now worth 3 times the gold. Today was also the egg festival, so I headed into town to check out the festivities. I bought a crap ton of strawberry seeds and made my rounds talking to all the villagers. When that was done, I talked to Lewis to get this egg hunt started and managed to collect 9 eggs.
Oh, I got 9. I don't know if that's enough. I kind of did really bad. Oh no, I'm nervous. The winner? 2 years in a row. 2 years in a row. Let's go.
Lewis declared me winner for the 2nd year in a row, and I collected my 1,000 gold and ran. The next morning was the last day for Pam's potatoes and Gunther's bone quest, and I was far off from my goal and accepted my defeat right then and there. I took a variety of gems over to Emily's sewing machine to test out what clothes I could make, but most of them were, once again, ugly. I was walking around town and realized that I could open the sewer hatch. I stepped inside and met this little shadow man named Krobus. Krobus is a little afraid of humans, but sells rare and exotic goods, including the return scepter for a whopping 2 million gold. I don't think I'll ever have enough money for that. I got a letter in the mail from Granny Evelyn requesting a leek so that she could give it to George. Of course, anything for you, Granny. I went to go say hi to the wizard and snoop around his house. I entered his basement and found the Shrine of Illusions, which would be a cool thing to know for the future. I stopped by the community job board and decided to accept the wizard's quest for ectoplasm. So I made my way into the local mines in hopes of running into a ghost. No luck today, so I tried again the next day and also didn't find any. I got a letter in the mail from Shane, who gave me some pepper poppers that he found in the back room of Jojo Mart ages ago. Not sure if I want to eat this in fear of food poisoning, but thanks, Shane. I went to forage for some goods to sell and came across the mariner on the beach. He said that if I had someone special in my heart, I could buy a mermaid's pendant from him and give it to my special someone. I didn't know if anywhere else I could buy this thing, so I gave him the 5K and went on my way. I spent the rest of my day in the Skull Caverns hoping for a ghost encounter. I had a few, but sadly, no ectoplasm drop. I encountered a prehistoric floor filled with a bunch of fire-breathing dragons, and I sadly got burnt to a crisp.
What? Ah! No, 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 no. Why are there so many dinosaurs? Ah! How do I get out of here? No. Ah!
I woke up in the hospital, but luckily did not lose any items. On my way home, I ran into Shane passed out on the cliffs. I don't want to spoil this cutscene for anyone, but as someone who has also struggled with depression, this entire scene had me crying by the end of it. And I'm just glad that Shane is okay. The next morning, Shane stopped by my house to talk about yesterday. I walked into my coop and got a notification that a baby lizard hatched. I decided to name it Gubby, and now I have 2 little lizards in my herd. I stopped by the greenhouse to check on my red cabbage, and it's almost done, finally. And then I headed over to the community center and donated a fern, which completed the chef's bundle. When that was over, I found Alex standing outside of his house. I remembered about the mermaid's pendant that I had bought earlier and decided to give it to him. He accepted and said he would get the ceremony ready in 3 days' time.
Oh, okay. This is the greatest thing that could have happened.
I spent the rest of my day in the Skull Cavern and found the secret note from Chi asking me to find his secret in the dark tunnel. Cryptic, but okay. The next morning, I headed to Marnie's to buy a rabbit, which I named Bilbert. These RNG names are really strange, but they're cute and charming, so I like them. Then I went to Hat Mouse's shack to peruse his inventory. I was going back and forth between the mouse ears and the tiara, but ultimately decided to wear the tiara as it fit the wedding theme that was coming up soon. When I woke up the next day, my red cabbage was finally done. So I plucked it up and ran over to the community center to donate it, completing the dye bundle, and then back to Skull Caverns for the rest of the day. The next morning was my wedding! Don't know why Lewis said that I'm finally now fitting into the community. What if I didn't want to get married, Lewis, weirdo? We said our I do's and Marnie was so excited for us.
Haley's in the back row. Look at Marnie. She's so happy. Celebration time. Come on.
Pierre sent us a letter in the mail asking for some sashimi, so I added that to my task list. I went inside my house only to find Alex's weight room attached to my bedroom. I enjoy the gym and all, but why does it have to be attached to the bedroom? Couldn't it have been a separate room? I decided to check out the tunnel that Mr. Chi had mentioned earlier and found a battery-powered lockbox inside. So I grabbed a battery from my farm and plopped it inside. The quest then told me to bring a rainbow shell to the train platform. And when I got home that night, I said hello to my new hubby who told me that my hair was looking good. The next day was spent in the Skull Caverns where I ultimately lost all of my health and ended up in the hospital. Oops. Then it was Gus's birthday, so I ran over and gifted him a diamond. It's a pretty bougie gift, but I love Gus, so it's okay. And when that was done, I ended up getting the networking achievement. Go me! The next morning, Gus visited my house to tell me that he knows everyone in town. He also had a pot of marinara with him that he kept stirring, but somehow it bursted into flames and it looked like he almost caught his eyebrows on fire. Luckily, that didn't happen, and he gifted us a mini jukebox. I immediately put the jukebox in my bedroom and turned on Tropicala, the best song on the Stardew soundtrack, in my opinion, fight me on it. A train was passing through the valley, so I decided I would go check it out to see what dropped. I got a few geodes and a pair of leprechaun shoes, which was pretty cool. I immediately went to Clint's to open up the geodes, then took the new items to the museum to donate. I decided that it was finally time to start a tree farm for my future keg empire. So I headed up to the quarry to place some tappers on the trees that I had planted there earlier. This would give me all of the oak resin that I would need in the future to craft kegs upon kegs. The next morning, I stopped by Clint's to upgrade my axe to gold and spent the next few hours fishing for a pufferfish for Demetrius. I finally caught one and rushed over to his house to deliver it, but he wasn't there. So I stalled at my farm for a little bit before finally running into him around town. Thanks for the extra 1,000 gold. The next day was the luau, so I made my way down to the beach, talked to all of the villagers, and threw a gold quality cheese into the pot. Hopefully this year my soup is better than average. The governor tasted the soup and said it was the best soup he's ever had.
He said, "Oh my, that's the best soup I've ever tasted." Oh my god! Look at him shove the soup into his mouth. He won't stop. He won't quit. Oh my god. He's like this.
The next morning, George sent me a recipe for fried eel in the mail, and to be honest, I don't think I'll ever cook it. I picked up my upgraded axe from Clint's and then stopped by Pierre's to see what he had in stock. I noticed he was selling a catalog which would give me access to all of the flooring and wallpaper available, so I decided to buy it. The next morning, the apples in my greenhouse were finally ready. This was the last thing I needed for the fodder bundle, so I harvested them and rushed over to the community center to donate. This was the last bundle I needed for the community center, and I watched the Junimos say bye, fix up the center, and return to the spirit world. My first goal for the year is complete. The next day was my hubby's birthday, so I gifted him an egg. It's a great gift, if you ask me. I messed around with the catalog I bought from Pierre's and made my bedroom look like my 5-year-old self puked all over it. I love it. I picked up a quest earlier to slay 50 skeletons for Clint, so I went into the mines to hunt them down. I ended up completing the quest on the same day and was rewarded with 6,000 gold. When I left the mines, I ran into Abigail playing her flute by the water in the pouring rain. I also noticed that we were watching her from the bushes, so I'm not sure why this is a recurring behavior for us. But she asked us to come jam with her, so I pulled a mini harp out of my ass.
What instrument is that? Hey, a mini harp. When did we get that?
And we vibed to the music in the rain. Afterwards, I stopped by the Adventurers Guild to see if I had any rewards waiting for me, and sure enough, there was a skeleton mask and a napalm ring available. I tried on the skeleton mask and hated it right away, and then I spent the rest of my day decorating my tree farm a bit. The next morning, Alex told me that he had watered some of my crops for me. That's so nice of you, Alex, but I have iridium sprinklers, and it's the thought that counts, I guess. He also said that this would be a great place to raise children, but we have one bedroom, so that's not gonna happen anytime soon, bucko. I got a letter in the mail from Lewis telling me that people around town have been receiving the bundles I donated to the community center, and then Clint sent me a recipe for my own geode crusher. Then I crafted some more tappers for my tree farm and threw them onto the trees. When I headed back into town, it was the grand reopening of the community center. All of the villagers were enjoying the updated community center, and Lewis thanked us for all of our hard work and presented us with the Stardew Hero Award. Then all of a sudden, Morris walked in disgruntled that all of his customers were now gone. Pierre said, "Let's settle this the old-fashioned way," squared up,
Oh my... The girls are fighting!
and yeeted Morris into space.
Willie doesn't care, he's just staring at the fish. Yeet! He just yeeted Morris.
And then Morris was never heard of again. I headed over to Sandy's shop in the desert to buy a boatload of starfruit seeds to plant in my greenhouse. Then I walked over to the beach and I was met with Willie, who told me that he was having a problem. He led me inside of his house and we found a crab infestation. And then Gus walked in and said that he would actually take all of the crabs. So he wrangled them up and Gus told me that he was going to be doing a special on crab cakes for the next few days. On my way home, I stopped by to talk to Krobus and bought a void egg from his shop, which I promptly put into the incubator. The next morning, Jody came to my door and invited me to dinner at her house. She requested that we bring a fresh largemouth bass when we arrive, so I accepted and said I would meet at her house at 7 tonight. When that was over, Alex came out and asked for 5,000 gold for a secret project that he was working on. I appreciated that he asked me instead of just taking money from our joint account, so I said okay, and he told me to swing by the saloon on Sunday to see the result. I checked my mail and received a letter from Willie, who said he had something to show me in the back of his shop. Afterwards, I got a ton of recipes from a bunch of different villagers. Not kidding, it felt like opening these recipes went on for forever. And the last letter was from Kent, requesting a starfruit to give to Jody for their anniversary. I thought it was a sweet gift, so I accepted. I had an extra starfruit in the fridge, so I quickly grabbed it and delivered it to Kent. When that task was done, I went fishing for the largemouth bass and got lucky because I was able to catch it pretty quickly. While waiting for dinner at Jody's, I decided to check out what Willie was talking about in his letter. I stopped by his shop and he took me to the back to show me his father's old boat. Willie said that he would repair it himself, but he didn't have the proper materials. So he asked if we could gather the materials and repair the boat for him, and in return he would take us to the Fern Islands. Right away, I knew that this must be Ginger Island that everyone talks about online, so I was eager to complete this request. And all I needed was some batteries, hardwood, and iridium bars. So I quickly got started and beelined towards the secret woods to harvest my daily hardwood. Afterwards, I wanted to see how much it would cost to upgrade my house, so I headed over to Robin's. When I arrived, she asked me if I ever made anything out of wood. So I said yes, and she said that we were finally good enough friends to give me the blueprints for the flute and drum block. It was finally 7 p.m., so I headed into town for dinner at Jody's when I ran into Lewis and Marnie talking about their secret relationship. Lewis was telling Marnie that if word got out, it would undermine his position of authority in town. Newsflash, Lewis, but your position of authority is already undermined.
Marnie, you deserve better than a man that wants to keep you hidden.
I came out of the bushes because for some reason I was in the bushes again and told them that I would keep the relationship a secret. They thanked me for that, but then asked why I was in the bushes in the first place, and I responded by walking back into the bushes. I guess the bushes is a safe spot for me. When that whole debacle was over, I arrived at Jody's place for dinner. I plopped the day-old fish onto the floor and we shared a nice meal together. The next morning, Alex told me that I looked beautiful. God, I love getting praise from this little cartoon man. I accepted a request from the job board to ship 100 blueberries by the end of the season, so I headed to Pierre's to buy some seeds. When I entered, I was stopped by a cutscene of me snooping in on an argument between Caroline and Abigail. Abigail said that they were too controlling, and Caroline said that she should thank them for letting her live there free of charge. Huh? Isn't that what you're supposed to do as a parent? I'm on Abigail's side for this one. I spent the rest of my time collecting hardwood and finally had enough to repair the boat. So I ran over to Willie's and threw the materials in and was told that the boat would be fixed overnight. I went to bed that night, but the boat wasn't fixed, and instead a big flash of lightning hit the old Joja Mart. That's karma, I guess. The next morning, I got a letter in the mail from Pierre telling me about his new rebate program. Then I collected more blueberries for the crop order request and headed to the boat to check out the repairs. Turns out it actually wasn't fixed overnight, so I guess I'll have to wait an extra day. I was meandering around town when I found an artifact spot and dug up my first prehistoric skull. I haven't been finding new artifacts, so I already know that finishing the museum is going to be a challenge. Overnight, the boat was finally fixed. I checked my mail in the morning and got an official letter from Willie telling me that the boat is open for business starting at 8 a.m. each day. Before heading to the boat, I wanted to see how much a shed would cost to build, so I headed over to Robin's. When I walked in, her and Demetrius were in the middle of an argument because Robin told him to pick up fruit and he got tomatoes, and he said, "Well, technically a tomato is a fruit," and then asked for my opinion. I went for vegetable to be on Robin's side just because I don't like Demetrius, and then Demetrius told Robin that he would try to get better. Don't try, just do better, Demetrius. When that was done, I headed to Clint's and put in the request to finally upgrade my hoe to copper. Then I beelined towards Willie's and took the boat for the first time.
Oh my god, look at our little boat. It's so cute. Is that a dinosaur? Oh my god. Oh, we're going to the volcano island?
I arrived at Ginger Island and was ready to soak up the sun. I ran into this little guy who ran away when he saw me. I didn't think I was that scary looking, but alright. I explored around, found some walnuts, and followed a little flame guy into the volcano. I quickly realized that I couldn't get across and would need my water can to do so. It was getting late in the night, so I made my way home. I had finally found a rainbow shell on the beach and decided to drop it at the train station before heading home for the night. When I got up to the train station, I ran into the wizard who was staring at the wall. He told me that he used to be married and apparently he fucked up so bad that she turned into a green witch and now curses everything in her path. He said that she stole his magic ink and is requesting us to retrieve it for him. Unfortunately, the passage to his ex-wife's house was sealed with dark magic, and he told us to go ask Krobus for a talisman to open it. I put that task into my to-do list and dropped the rainbow shell into the train platform. A note fell from the ceiling, and my next task was to drop 10 beets inside of the mayor's fridge. I headed straight to Krobus and asked him about the talisman. He told me that he had dropped it in the tunnel to the left and said we could find it in there. It was getting late, so I decided I would tackle that tomorrow. When I woke up the next morning, I got the notification that the crop order request was complete, and then I received a mini shipping bin from Lewis in the mail. I stopped by Marnie's to buy some hay and ran into Shane. He said that he swapped beer for sparkling water, which is fantastic, and he showed me to the barn in the back and introduced me to his blue chickens. I wonder how I can get one for myself. I returned home and got another letter in the mail. This time it was from Lewis and he was requesting some truffle oil. I picked up my copper hoe from Clint's and returned to the sewer to search for the talisman in the tunnel. I made my way through a bunch of bugs and skulls and found the talisman in a chest at the very back. On my way back to the train station, I stopped by the saloon to check out Alex's secret project when I walked in to Gus telling me about the saloon's financial struggles. He said that it was mainly because of Pam and her unpaid tab, and at the same time, Pam walked in and asked Gus to pour her out one. And so I yelled at her that she needed to pay off her tab first. She was angry, but then she was like, yeah, probably should. And she paid it off, got her drink, and everyone was happy. I walked to the back of the saloon and found Alex and all the guys in town watching football. He said that he took the $5,000 that we gave him and turned his room into a Sunday football hangout place for all the guys in town. It's nice seeing him bond with everyone like this, so I think it was money well spent. I returned to the train platform with the talisman, and the passage to the witch's hut was finally opened. It teleported me to a swamp where the witch's house was blocked by a goblin henchman. He said that I couldn't pass, but my questline said that there might be something that could persuade him. I stopped by Robin's place to buy a shed, and then headed to the desert to buy beet seeds from Sandy, which I quickly planted in my greenhouse. The next morning was the dwarf's birthday, so I headed on up and gifted him an amethyst, which he loved. I decided to head back into Ginger Island with my watering can in hand to explore the volcano, and when I got off the boat, I ran into a bird that pooped a topaz. A crane? Hi! Ah! He just pooped a topaz! The volcano was filled with a bunch of harder enemies and secret notes, one being from a pirate, I think. I made it all the way to level 9 before passing out and waking up back at home. I returned to the volcano mines first thing in the morning and made it all the way to the end where I discovered a forge where I can upgrade my tools. Overnight, I reached level 10 foraging and chose the botanist profession. A bunch of starfruit were ready the next morning and I threw them into my new keg shed in hopes of some big profits later. Then I went to deliver the truffle oil to Lewis. I returned to Ginger Island, looked up the location of a bunch of walnuts, and started trying to track them down. I finally collected 10 walnuts and decided to unlock the Parrot Express, which granted me fast travel access across the island. I finally got the boy from earlier to talk to me, and he told me that his name is Leo, and he grew up on this island with all the birds. He seemed kind of sad, but hopefully he warms up to us later. Then I ran into an old lady on the beach who asked me for a favor. She said that her husband was a pirate captain, and she said that she's been guarding his bones for years and that she wanted us to help her find a keepsake of his. I went around looking for more walnuts and stumbled across the Simon Says puzzle one. This one was kind of hard, but I actually liked it. Dun, 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 dun. Yes? Woo! The next morning, back on the farm, my Beats for Mr. Cheese quests were finally done. So I headed to Lewis's, stuck them in the fridge, and found a note taped inside telling me to give the sand dragon his last meal. Not sure what that means, but I'll look it up later, I guess. It was also Leo's birthday today, so I headed back to Ginger Island and gave him a piece of cheese as a gift. I walked around for a little bit trying to find more golden walnuts, but ultimately got frustrated and went back to Pelican Town for the day. This becomes a recurring theme, actually. I walked into the saloon where I ran into Elliot, who graciously bought me a glass of wine. I said a toast to our friendship and we danced the night away. When that was over, I took what Birdie gave me on Ginger Island and gave it to Kent. Kent told me that him and the man in the photo had fought in the war together. As a reward for bringing him this old memory, he gave us some gourmet tomato salt. And this is where I started looking up the next steps on the Stardew Wiki because there's no way I could have figured this all out on my own, just by the way. I took the salt straight back to the saloon and gave it to Gus, who said he would trade us it for a Stardew Valley rose. Then I took the rose and made my way all the way to the desert to deliver it to Sandy. Sandy thanked me and gave me an advanced TV remote in return. I actually knew who this item would be for, none other than my grandfather-in-law. And when I walked into George's house, Evelyn was baking her famous cookies and gave us a bite. I handed over the TV remote to George and taught him how to use it, and to give thanks, he gave us an Arctic shard in return. I gave that Arctic shard to the wizard, who happily took it from us, and he gave me a wriggling worm in return. Worm equals fish, so I gave the worm to Willie and he gave me a pirate's locket. I knew that this was finally the last step in this long scavenger hunt quest. So I headed back to Ginger Island and gave the locket to the lady on the beach. She confirmed that it was her late husband's and that the locket would give her comfort for the rest of her life. In return, she gave us a handful of walnuts and the crafting recipe for fairy dust. With the new walnuts that the lady gave us, I finally had enough to unlock the little broken bridge leading to the dig site. So I made my way over and mined all the rocks over there. I noticed that there was a noise coming from the other side of the giant rock there, so I had to remember to bring a bomb with me the next time I went so I could blow it up. I was going to go back to Ginger Island the next day, but I was blocked by the Light of the Moonlight Jellies Festival, so I just spent the day on my farm. What? I can't go to Ginger Island today? Oh, boo. What do you mean I can't? Ah! Stupid Moonlight Jellies! It was now the first day of fall. I started off the new season by clearing old crops and buying some new seeds from Pierre's. I planted what I needed and headed straight back to the island. I used a bomb to blow up the rock at the dig site, and out came this old man. He said that he had been stuck inside that cave for months. And then I found out his name was Professor Snail and he owned the tent on the island. So I went inside his tent and donated a few of the fossils that I had found around. I also answered some of the island survey questions by referencing the good old Stardew Wiki. And the rest of my day was spent searching and searching and searching for more golden walnuts. The next week in game was spent on Ginger Island desperately looking for walnuts, which I didn't have much luck on. I decided to give up for a little and returned to my farm where I had bought a Junimo hut and saw them working for the first time. Oh my god, I forgot I put down the Junimo hut and they're working! They're little farmers! Look at them go! Harvesting my pumpkins. That is freaking adorable. I love that. This was definitely worth the money. I stopped by Marnie's to buy more hay and bought my first auto grabber, which would prove to be extremely helpful in the future. I spent the next day decorating my farm a little bit. I hadn't spent too much time yet decorating the farm, so I figured it would be nice for it to look a little bit nicer. The next day was the Stardew Valley Fair. I headed over, played some games, bet all of my star tokens on green, and bought everything from Pierre's that I don't already have. Then I set up my Grange display with a variety of gold quality items and goods and managed to win first place for a second year in a row. That was the weirdest oh yeah. We won first! Again. The next day was another unsuccessful walnut hunt, and then off to Robin's to buy my very first fish pond. I stuck it on my farm and planned to put a puffer fish in it later because I heard those were good. Afterwards, I decided to head into the desert to buy more starfruit seeds from Standy. Starfruit wine has been making me the most money so far, so this was my current profit strategy. I usually would plant them in the greenhouse, but this time I decided to plant them on my Ginger Island farm to spruce it up a little bit. The next morning, I got a request from Pam in the mail for a battery for her TV remote. Sure, Pam, I have a few in stock that I can actually give to you right now. I went back to Ginger Island, but this time with some iridium sprinklers in hand so I wouldn't have to worry about watering my seeds. I also added some pathing down so those darn farm weeds don't damage anything as often. The next day, I finally had enough oak resin and ores to make kegs, so I made a boatload of kegs, enough to fill a whole shed, and threw a batch of starfruit in them. I found an ancient drum artifact, which is something I hadn't found before, so I excitedly donated that puppy to the museum. Then I decided to go visit Penny and walked in on her complaining about the mess in her home. I involuntarily offered to help her clean it up, and so we got started. And then Pam walked in super upset and embarrassed that we were cleaning up all of her stuff. And to be honest, I understand where she's coming from. I wouldn't want anyone else cleaning up my personal mess or my personal stuff either. They kicked me out of the house, but I was determined to talk to Penny and get my friendship up with her, so I walked back in and boom! Another cutscene. Penny decided to try and cook a new recipe and asked us to try it. We did, and we turned just a little bit green. I didn't want to hurt her feelings, so I lied and told her that it was delicious. Penny was so happy with that response, so I guess that's all that matters. Back on Ginger Island, I had discovered this weird frogman. Thinking that he would give me more walnuts, I looked up how to solve his quest and planted a melon. When the melon was fully grown, I told the frogman about it and he slurped and said, "Bombo pink, bombo juicy." And when I finally returned home, Alex told me that he got some new shorts. Kind of weird, and he blushed while he was saying that, but okay, good to know, Alex, thank you. The next morning was George's birthday, so I ran over and gifted him a ruby, which he, of course, loved. I returned to Ginger Island, and the wheat that I had planted was done growing. This was the next crop for the frog guy, so I dragged him out of his den once again, and he said it reminded him of an old girlfriend. Interesting statement, I wonder what he means by that. With the wheat, I finally had collected 20 walnuts, so I ran over to the docks and unlocked the resort. And the resort was so cool and cute! I can't wait to see who visits. Oh my god. This is so cool! Back at the farm, I had thrown my puffer fish into my fish pond and they had finally multiplied to 3. Now they're asking for special gifts? I didn't know that fish could ask for gifts, but they wanted a frozen geode. I had a ton just stored in my chest, so I ran over, grabbed one, and dropped it in, and then they were jumping for joy and the population potential grew. I wanted to build a new keg shed, so I headed over to Robin's and put in a request for a spankin' new one. The next day, I checked the daily luck and the spirits were in good humor. I figured that this was finally enough to tackle reaching level 100 in the Skull Caverns. I had been prepping for this moment by collecting staircases, bombs, and a shitload of cheese, so I was ready. I warped to the desert and started my journey in the caverns. I'm not gonna lie, I started off trying to make it a wholesome run and actually getting through, but I really just ended up using staircases for most of the way down. I mean, hey, there's technically no rules against it. I finally made it to floor 100 and got to meet the mysterious Mr. Chi, who was standing in a room with a bunch of black dancing snakes. Then he told me that getting down in the caverns using mostly staircases was not honorable, but oh well, no one told me, okay? He gave me iridium snake milk, which increased my health by 25, and I left the cavern. The next morning was also good news because my starfruit wine was done cooking, and this meant big money overnight, so I was hyped. I decided to tackle Mr. Chi's other quest and got tired of guessing what to feed the sand dragon, so I just looked it up. I took a solar essence and dropped it in the skull of a dragon in the desert, and there was a note hidden in the skull telling us to check the wood pile at our house. So I warped home, checked the wood pile, and found a club card. I remembered once that someone told me I could use the club card at the desert, so I knew I had to run there. I took the bus back and ran to the bouncer in Sandy's shop. They let me through and I tried my first round of Calico Jack, which I ended up winning, of course. I played some more games and some slots, but decided to head home before I got too carried away. I went to bed that night, prepping for the first day of winter, and made a good chunk of change from my starfruit wine overnight. Winter's a pretty bleh season for me in this game. I honestly run out of things to do, so I didn't really know what was in store for me for the next 28 days. And then I remembered about Ginger Island, where it was summer all year round. So I raced over there to find that my starfruit was ready. What a pleasant surprise! And another pleasant surprise was going to the resort and seeing villagers there for the first time. Pam looked spiffy in her swimsuit, and then, of course, Demetrius was still wearing his regular clothes. I decided to keg the starfruit that I just gathered, so I returned to Pelican Town, collected oak resin at the tree farm, crafted kegs, and then threw in the fruit. This started the routine of Pelican Town one day and Ginger Island the next. I ran around Ginger Island, running into more shirtless villagers and digging up artifact spots when I finally found something that I could donate to Professor Snail. This ended up completing the snake fossils, so yay, one step closer to a complete museum. I took the walnuts he gave me and unlocked the island trader, who happens to be this cute, dorky looking bluebird. But he doesn't take gold, so I wasn't able to buy anything that day. Since I had completed the snake for Professor Snail, I thought I would try to get more stuff for the main museum. So I went to the desert and traded in all of my Omni Geodes for artifact troves. I took the troves to Clint and opened them all up and found some new stuff, which I promptly donated to the museum next door. The next morning, I got a letter in the mail from the wizard asking for an iridium bar. I have lots of those, so I quickly delivered him one and he gave me a good 5k in return. I decided to explore around town a bit and stumbled across the old Joja Mart. I hadn't been in there since the very beginning of my playthrough, so I wanted to see what it was like post-Lightning Strike. And to my surprise, there was a Junimo inside. So I approached and discovered the missing bundle. Huh? Who was going to tell me about this earlier? Anyway, I decided that this would be my next goal to complete before the year was over. I looked up where I could get some of the ingredients and quickly caught the void salmon at the witch's hut. I knew I was going to need caviar, so I built another fish pond and caught a sturgeon at the mountain lake. My auto grabber was holding a dino egg, so I threw one in the mail machine and collected it the next day. It was also the Festival of Ice today, so I headed straight down, bought some items from the shop, and mentally prepared for the fishing competition. The fishing competition isn't my favorite, but I managed to pull out a win for the second year in a row. I returned home, and overnight my goat named Bus had a baby, so I decided to name it Boat. I woke up the next morning to my sturgeon requesting a diamond. Okay, bougie sturgeon, but here you go, anything for that caviar, I guess. The next morning, Willie asked for a lingcod. Before going to go fish for it, I decided to check on the status of all the ancient fruit I had been trying to plant over the course of the season. The extra bundle would need 5 gold quality ancient fruit, so I knew I would be needing to check back on this frequently. And then it was off to the mountain lake to go fish for lingcod. I caught it not too long later, so I was excited about that. It was Harvey's birthday the next day, so I gifted him a nice warm cup of coffee. Giving Harvey that coffee gave me the popular achievement, and when I went to check it, turns out I had reached the millionaire achievement too. Yay, another goal done for the year. I decided to snoop around Harvey's house for a bit, and when I returned to the main floor, he told me that he had been trying to reach me about my annual checkup. He took me to the back room, checked my heart rate, and told me that my pulse was a little high. I responded by saying that I was a wee bit nervous, and he said it was okay and that I was actually super healthy. This was a great checkup if you ask me. I checked the community board and found an island request to ship 100 taro root. Taro root seems pretty easy to get, so I decided to take this on. I headed straight to Ginger Island and knew the dig site always had some taro roots, so I dug all of them up and promptly planted them on my farm. Back on my main farm, my sturgeon finally dropped some roe. I had just enough time left to throw them in a preserve jar and get the caviar that I needed. While I waited for the roe to ferment, I crafted a bunch more kegs and threw starfruit in them. I also totally forgot about the night market and decided to give it a visit. I bought some more items that I didn't already have and went deep sea fishing for a little. I spent the next day decorating my farm, and the day after that I found out who my special friend was for the Feast of the Winter Star. It was Alex, my husband. This should be easy. I'll just give him an egg because he loves eggs, right? I also decided that I wanted to upgrade my house, so I headed to Robin's and put in the request. While Robin was working on the house, Gus sent me a letter requesting for a coconut, so I quickly grabbed one from my chest and kept it in my inventory for later. I took the prismatic jelly quest from the wizard and attempted to find it in the quarry mines but had no luck, and then I tried the regular mines after but also no luck. The next morning, more ancient fruit was done growing and I was able to get 2 more gold quality ones. I'm almost at the 5 that I need for the bundle. It was also Evelyn's birthday, so I ran over to her house to give her a gift when I walked into George having trouble reaching a book at the top of the shelf. He told me about how he got his injury while working in the mines back in the day. When he was done telling his story, I gave Evelyn a shiny diamond for her birthday. After that, I delivered the coconut to Gus and then went to Ginger Island for the rest of the day. A bunch of taro root was done growing, so I plucked them all up and threw them in the shipping bin. The next morning, my house expansion was finally done. There was a crib in one of the rooms and I was confused. I'm not having babies anytime soon, I think. And when I walked outside, the caviar was done brewing and I finally had enough gold quality ancient fruits, so I beelined towards the old Joja Mart. I donated all of the items and the last Junimo finally returned home. Then I was told something good would happen soon. What is it? I need to know now. But anyways, when that was over, I spent the rest of the day decorating my new big house. Overnight, the Junimos did their Junimo magic, and so I rushed over and it turned into a freaking movie theater. Movies? There's movies? When I went to go buy my first ticket, I realized that it said I could give another to a friend. So I went back home and invited Alex to the movies. He accepted, of course, and we headed to the theater together. Inside was also so cool, except for this guy hogging the crane machine. Like, hello, can I get a turn, please? I visited the concession stand and decided to buy some nachos for Alex and I, and they told me that they would be delivered to our seat, which is fancy. And so we watched The Miracle at Cold Star Ranch. Alex was having a good time and enjoying his nachos, and before we knew it, the movie was over. This was a great date, if you ask me. After the movie, I tried to go to Ginger Island, but was having issues getting to the boat. Oh, are they all going to Ginger Island? Why is there there's so many people! I want to go too. Go Penny, move! But once I finally got to the island, I made my rounds saying hi to all of the visiting villagers and looking at all their different resort wear. I was perusing the Stardew Wiki for more walnut locations and saw something about Pirates Cove. So I located it and headed over to explore. When I got there, there was a freaking mermaid sitting on a rock. I didn't know how to talk to her, but how cool is that anyway? But, per usual, I looked it up and figured out that the rocks on the beach make a special sound that gives you walnuts. So I went home, crafted a bunch of flute blocks, threw them on the rocks, and played the little tune. And then the mermaid threw walnuts at me. Yes, mission accomplished, and all hail the Stardew Wiki. Then I discovered a cave in the back and a fishing pond where I caught a gourmand statue. Basically, it's the big bumble frog guy from earlier. And so I kept fishing and I caught a second frog guy statue. Just my luck. Eventually, I caught a stingray and found out that they can give you dragon's teeth from a fish pond. I didn't have any dragon's teeth, so I thought that this would be useful in the future. I went home and put both of the frog statues on my farm. They look very weird, but I love them. And when I woke up in the morning, Alex mentioned kids filling up the house. Huh? Putting that weird comment aside, I decided to put in a request for another fish pond for my new stingray. I visited Ginger Island and the rest of my taro tubers were done growing, which would help me fulfill that request overnight. The next morning was the Feast of the Winter Star, so I grabbed an egg from my coop and headed into town. I bought some festive merchandise and gifted the egg to Alex. He was grateful, and then I found out my secret Santa was Emily, and she gave me a shiny new ruby. I returned home and plopped the Christmas tree I bought right in my living room. My new fish pond was also ready, so I threw the stingray I caught into it. Hopefully I'll get a dragon tooth soon. I opened some golden coconuts at Clint and uncovered a prehistoric skull, which I quickly donated to the museum on Ginger Island. This gave me some hope about finding new artifacts, so I warped to the desert, traded more Omni Geodes for artifact troves, and then headed back to Clint's. The last few days of the year was spent just meandering around town and my farm, and before I knew it, it was the start of year 3. Overnight, Grandpa came and visited me in my dreams.
Who is that? Grandpa?
He told me that his heart will always remain in Stardew Valley and that he was very proud of us. He also said that his spirit was finally put to rest. This was such a wholesome moment to close out year 2. I was so very grateful, my heart was warm, and when I walked out of my house on the first day of spring, 4 candles were lit on my farm. So that concludes 200 days of Stardew Valley as a complete beginner. I feel like I did pretty well. I got to Ginger Island, I made $1 million, I discovered the hidden bundle and unlocked the movie theater, but now we don't really know what to do. So let me know down in the comments what you guys usually do after year 2 post Community Center and Ginger Island. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like videos like these and want to see more in the future, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. But without further ado, I'll see you all next time. Bye!